living in victim mentality is literally the most comfortable fucking thing that you can do for yourself. And I think it's like when you play a video game and you have like normal mode, God mode, whatever. So you choose like extra easy mode, because being a victim exempts you from being responsible for yourself, and it exempts you for like taking charge of your life and just being the creator of your life. And I'm not saying this to blame anyone, because I think people who develop a victim mentality, such as myself, because I feel like I've spent the last year, this year, having a lot of moments where I kind of like reverted back to victim mentality, but I'm not gonna blame myself because I know why I developed it. And it's the following. I was reading into it this morning, like, why do we develop victim mentality? And I read that usually people who go through like extended periods or amounts of trauma end up feeling so helpless about their life that they just feel like over time that they cannot take charge of their lives. You know, for example, let's say like your mom was an alcoholic and you felt helpless when you were small because you were 5 and you couldn't really help her, you couldn't get out of that situation, you couldn't do anything. So we develop that feeling of helplessness, and over time we don't really change it. But I think like when you're 5 years old, that feeling of helplessness makes sense. When you're 25 and you are able to get a job, you're able to get a house, you're able to like get certain things and maybe remove yourself from the situation, or like get your mom into a facility or something like that, you're no longer helpless. But a lot of people like want to continue be in this helpless position because it just makes living life a lot easier. And I think especially with the rise of people either self-diagnosing themselves or like being diagnosed with like mental illnesses and things like that, because that's something that I was talking about with a friend the other day, and she was really right about this because I've done this myself as well, where she was saying how a friend of hers got diagnosed with like limit personality, I think it's borderline personality disorder in English, and instead of just being like, hey, I have borderline, but I'm gonna try to do better because I know that being borderline makes me do X, Y, and Z, and I need to change those behaviors to not hurt people around me, she would continue to do really bad things all the time and then be like, oh, I have borderline, so that's the reason why I do these things, so you need to like forgive me. And there's a really fine line about like, what's it called, like explaining your behavior or justifying your behavior. I feel like you can go either way. If you're a victim, you will justify everything with like your mental illness, with your trauma, with this and that. And if you explain it, it's like, okay, because I have this trauma, because I have this disorder, I have the tendency to think like this, or I have the tendency to be that, but I'm gonna choose not to do it, or I'm gonna choose to change that behavior. And I feel like it will, like, you can use that to excuse yourself if you do things like wrong things from time to time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because I mean, for example, I have a compulsive lying dad, and that has led me to be a compulsive liar. But I went to therapy, I worked on changing it, and I am still working on changing it because I feel like that just doesn't go fully away if you don't like practice it over time. But there's been moments in my life where I'm like, oh, but because I had a compulsive lying dad, I lie. No, I have the power to change that, and whoever is not changing it is because they are refusing to do so. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that maybe at the beginning until you realize this, but the moment you realize that you have a problem, that's why it's so important, I think, being conscious of the problem that you have, because that's like the first step. Like, that's the most important part of like, I have this problem and I need to do something to start changing it. It's like those people, and I used to be one of those people as well, who justify everything with like, oh, I'm an Aries, so, you know, like, I'm selfish. No, that's not how it works, babe. I'm an Aries. I know that makes me be selfish, but I also need to start doing things so that they don't impact the people around me. Because at the end of the day, if you end up being alone with no friends, you're the only one to blame, you know? And I think also that when you have developed a victim mentality, where you've lived, or maybe even you've seen your parents have that victim mentality, and I think I kind of like have my mom a bit on that spectrum as well. It's like we have some kind of like need that we are fulfilling by being a victim, like getting sympathy from people, getting help from people, not having to take charge of our lives or anything like that. And there's a simple solution for this, because I kind of like realized that I had a victim mentality a long time ago, because people were like, you're being a victim, and I didn't really want to see it. But if people around you are telling you that you're being a victim, maybe start realizing why everyone is telling you that. I feel like there's a simple, I'm going to say simple because it's not easy, but it's simple. There's a simple way to change this, and it's that you need to kind of like realize what you're getting from being a victim. For example, in my case, if I think like, well, what am I getting out of being a victim? It's that I am afraid of my potential. I am afraid of putting in the work. I am afraid of committing to my potential. And because I'm afraid of all of these things, I refuse to kind of like take charge for myself and kind of like put the work that is needed towards like getting, like fulfilling my dreams, this and that. Because I'm like, what if my dreams don't work out? What if my dream of becoming a singer is actually trash? What if I actually am like the worst singer ever and I'm not able to make it happen? So like all these fears end up making me be like, okay, if I'm a victim to this situation and I just don't do anything, I'm never gonna have to face the feeling of failure, the feeling of rejection, putting myself out there, you know, everything. And there's something else that I want to comment on this spectrum, and it's that, or on this side, that I feel like I've seen this happen, especially like with my younger sister, because she has diagnosed depression. And I'm not, this is important, I'm not invalidating anyone's feelings or anyone's like mental illness or anything like that. I just want to say something about this. And it's that I have always had people tell me that I have high functioning depression. My sister doesn't have high functioning depression, she just has depression. There's a lot of days where she doesn't get out of bed, where she doesn't shower, where she doesn't do this, this, and this. And I know depression, for example, makes you like, it just makes everything more difficult. But I realized that there were weeks where I was like, okay, what things are you doing for my sister especially? What things is she doing for herself to kind of like make everything be better? Or what times is she just like being a victim of her depression and just staying like that? And there's two ways to go here. There were some weeks where she was like waking up more or less early, forcing herself out of bed, working out, drinking water, eating healthy. And those weeks, maybe she had like one really bad day where she couldn't get out of bed, but the rest of the week she was functioning, she was going to like art school, all the things that she was doing. And then there's weeks where she literally doesn't try, she doesn't even try to do anything, or at least, I mean, sometimes she says that she tries, but the depression doesn't let her. And I mean, I guess here it depends. Like, I'm not going to judge anything because I don't have depression as like that. I have high functioning depression, which is a bit different, I guess. But the thing is, like, then there's weeks where like I've seen her, like when her friends are like, oh, do you want to go out and do things? She will get dressed and just leave the house. So she does have the energy to do that. But if you tell her like, hey, maybe you should tidy up your room because your room is a mess and that probably makes everything worse for you, she will not do that. So when I see those things, I'm like, okay, is it just that you don't really have the energy because depression is not allowing you to do anything? Or are you just like using depression as this thing of like, oh, I'm a victim of depression, so I'm just not gonna try it all. And I'm just gonna keep staying in this shitty place, you know? But anyways, this was just like me trying to like question all of this, because I've seen people go through depression, like being in the similar or almost exact way that my sister is, and kind of like getting themselves out of it. And my sister kind of like using depression as this like, hey, I have depression, so I'm just gonna use it for whatever I want. Because the thing is, my sister, like, first thing, we come from the same family. The three of us have experienced more or less the same trauma, so like we have a tendency to be victims. And before my sister had depression, when she was like 5 years old, she already did these things where like she would find excuses to not do things. I mean, I would do as well. So knowing her, I'm like, okay, I can understand, and I can be understanding of like, maybe depression is obviously like making everything difficult. But I also see a lot of people kind of like using their disorder and being like, oh, I have this disorder, so I'm not gonna try to change anything. So I think that's, you're doing more harm to yourself than you're doing to anyone else. And on another note, what I realized also is that this year, especially, where I've realized like I've kind of reverted back to my victim mentality, it's been because of the following. I think there's two factors in life that will lead to you succeeding at something or like accomplishing a goal that you have. One thing is like everything that you put in, and then the other part is like either luck, the universe, you can call it whatever. And those two meet in the middle. You can put in effort, but there needs to be a bit of luck or like universe, magic, whatever coming to meet you there so that you can accomplish a dream. Like, let's, for example, like the example of Mariah Carey, who was always, I think I pronounced it correctly, I don't know. She was always like singing in that Frankfurt or hot dog stand that she was working at until someone discovered her. So this was her putting her gift out to the world every freaking day. and luck met her in the middle. If you're putting this part, you cannot have the universe just like do the work for you, because that's not how it works. And I realized that this year I was not really putting in everything that I could have put in. And I was always making excuses for myself. Like, this was the first year that I actually had so much free time, because one of the things that I really wanted is like make money with like the little amount of work possible, with like being a freelancer and everything, so that I have all the free time in the world to learn Japanese, play the piano, write songs, do YouTube, do this, do that. And I have had so many free hours this year to do all of this, and I spent probably like 70 or 60% of them laying in bed watching Netflix, being like, oh, I don't have energy. So since I don't have energy, it's probably because I'm depressed. It's probably because like I spent so many years in like hustle mode and I need to rest and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying there's not a part of this that is correct, and there's not a part of me that needed to rest a little bit more than maybe before. But there's also a part of me that's like, Ada, if you look at the lifestyle that you've led during the past months, you haven't been working out, you haven't been drinking water, you haven't been eating healthy. So like there's a lot of things that you've already been doing that probably made this worse. And whenever I had like maybe a few good weeks where I was like working out, doing this, doing that, everything just worked a bit better and things just started happening a bit more, because I'm the kind of person, like if I put in the work, I see results pretty easily. And I feel like everyone more or less, maybe this is just me, but I feel like whenever I'm putting the work to manifest, things do happen. Maybe not like the craziest things, but things do happen for me. So I kind of like need to be responsible of the fact that I haven't been putting in the work. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I think like with like every addiction, because being a victim or having victim mentality is an addiction at the end of the day, that's giving you dopamine, that's giving you the safe space, that's giving you like not having to be responsible for your life. You sometimes maybe need to like be like not be a victim for a while and then kind of like go back to being a victim for a little while, so kind of like you can solve another problem that comes with this. Because a big part of me this year especially is that I feel like I had a lot of rage inside of me, a lot of unsolved emotions that just started to come out in the last year, I think. And I finally felt like I could express myself, because that's something that maybe a few years before I couldn't really express myself. I couldn't really like get all these like dark emotions outside of me, like rage, anger, all of that. And the problem is like the moment I felt like I could express those, I went to the extreme of expressing them way too much. And instead of maybe the content that I put out on social media or things that I was doing were positive, they ended up being a bit too negative, and I wasn't really bringing anything to the table. And I mean, I think it's fine. And maybe this, like whatever happened this year was necessary for me to kind of like first take all my emotions and put them out, and second kind of like clear that for me to go back to like my stable, positive way of living, if that makes sense. And the other thing is also that I was talking to my sister this morning, and she was also like, you know that when you're 5 years old and you have rage, you have anger, maybe you will throw a temper tantrum, you will take a plate and break it on the ground, you will hit your mom. But it makes sense when you're 5 that you don't know how to regulate yourself, that you will have these reactions. When you're almost 30, those reactions are a bit unhealthy. They're unhealthy for you and they're unhealthy for your life, because you will break relationships, you will break things that are valuable to you, you're gonna do things that are actually toxic towards yourself. So she was like, you can take coping mechanisms that are actually healthy for you, because you had a time to be this. But maybe when you were a child, you didn't have the chance to kind of like express yourself because your parents wouldn't let you, or they will punish you, they would punish you for doing these things. So you've repressed all of that. Obviously, you need to get that out, but you need to get that out in a healthy way, and you don't get to do that in an unhealthy way that hurts other people or hurts yourself, because like, why would you hurt yourself when there's healthy ways of like coping with that? And so that's actually really true. That there's been moments where I kind of like had a fight with someone, and instead of being like, I'm gonna kill this person, I'm gonna insult them, I'm gonna do all of these things to just like get this out, I felt like I had to get it out on someone else. And honestly, that didn't really do anything for me. Like maybe it made me feel good for like a split second, and then I was like, now I feel bad that I hurt them, now I feel bad that I insulted them, now I feel bad that maybe the relationship is going to end. There's been a lot of things there. When you can also be like, okay, I have all this rage and anger inside of me right now. Instead of putting it out on this person who maybe they have done something wrong, but maybe they haven't done something that wrong so that I should scream at them, I'm just gonna go for a run. I'm just gonna get a cold shower. I'm just gonna do something that just helps me calm down my nervous system. And then I will talk to them when I'm like in a better place where like I don't hurt them and I don't hurt the relationship, or I don't hurt the house that I'm living in, because I don't know, there could be a moment where I could just like take my camera and want to throw it out the window, but I'm hurting myself because then I cannot film more videos. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like learning how to cope healthily with like healthier coping mechanisms when it comes to this, and just also like realizing what are you getting out of your victim mentality. In my case, I'm kind of like, it's a great place to hide from my potential. Great place. Really recommend it here. But that means that I never get to live me being proud of myself for the like dreams that I can accomplish, or to see the results that I want to see, you know? And it's easier to sometimes, or it's been easier for me sometimes, to just be like in this weird place where I'm not accomplishing anything, but then I resent everyone else who's accomplishing those things. Like when it comes to like the YouTube 100k subscribers, I have another channel, like my main channel, where I have almost 50,000 subscribers. And this year, I think I gained only like 10k subscribers, which is like, I've made more subscribers other years. What the fuck happened? And then I see other people kind of like getting all the subscribers, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Why are they getting more subscribers? I mean, why is this? What is that? And then I was thinking about it yesterday or this morning, being like, Ada, if you look at your content, maybe you will realize that this year you've spent way more time like hating on things and like kind of like putting more negative things out in the world than positive. And realizing this now has made me kind of rethink a lot of things and be like, okay, I was putting a really positive message the year before, and then for some reason this year I just had a lot of shit to get out, and I needed to solve this, and this needed to happen in order for me to kind of like realize that I needed to get out of victim mentality again. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I feel like if you come from like having suffered, as I said, trauma and all of that, and you've been a victim all your life, it's easy to kind of like go back to that. But I feel like realizing that you are there's nothing wrong with it, and you can just like go back to it, realize that you're there, and then come out of it again. And then I feel like each time you come out of that, it's going to be stronger and you're going to be healthier, if that makes sense. So I hope this video was helpful to anyone here. If you're going through that, like, I completely understand you. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't be hard on yourself, and the most important part is also like, don't blame yourself for the time you spend in victim mode, because I feel like that's another reason why it's hard for us to get out of victim mode, is that if you realize like, oh my God, I spent X years in victim mode, like 5 years in victim mode, and all those years could have been used to like go after my dreams, and I could be there right now. You're gonna end up continuing in victim mode to not face those emotions that come with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you're gonna be 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever, to make your dreams come true because you've spent like 30 years in victim mode, that's fine. It's better late than never, okay? That's the important message I want to leave you with. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you guys next week.